Here's something for those that are struggling with perpetual people pleasing, for constantly being in one-sided relationships, or finding themselves trying to prove themselves to everybody, trying to win people approval, things like that. And it's important to understand that a lot of the time, the people that are stuck in these patterns, they're holding on to some unconscious beliefs inside of themselves. And these beliefs are rooted in shame. Shame of not being enough and not being inherently good. So shame basically in its core believes that you're broken, that you cannot be fixed. And the only way that you can survive is by constantly layering on top of the shame some evidence that you are okay. And it's a never-ending process. It's exhausting, and at the end, because the foundational beliefs that you are bad, inherently bad, prevent you from really having deep self-acceptance and deep self-validation, which then relieves the world from the job or expectation to constantly validate you and make you feel better about yourself. So here is where this comes from. Children are mirrors to their environment. They are reflecting everything that is happening around them, especially their parents. So a child is born into a family of the parents with the qualities that are exactly what's needed to help parents wake up to their own repressed feelings, their own unconscious programming, their limiting beliefs. And so having a child is a really challenging experience for most parents, because a lot of us don't really want to face what's really deep inside. And so when a child is born into a family where parents may be holding some shame and they don't really want to face it, what happens is having a child with specific qualities and specific expressions is going to trigger that shame within the parent, whether it's sexual shame or body shame or behavioral shame. Anything that they don't want to feel, anything they have shame around is going to get triggered. And so what happens is a parent that doesn't have the capacity or the awareness to deal with the shame, what they would do is react. And the way parents react is through projection. A negative projection basically means that if there's something inside of me that I don't want to feel, I don't want to face, I don't want to acknowledge, whoever triggers it around me, I'm going to take that feeling and I'm going to project it onto them as if they have it. So for example, if I feel some shame around vulnerability and I have a belief that it's weak, and let's say I have a child who expresses vulnerability, that triggers that shame inside of me, that fear inside of me, and I don't want to feel it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that shame, I'm going to project that shame onto the child, shaming the child for their vulnerability, projecting that it's weak, for example, and it's shameful. And I can do that with feelings, I can do that with words or behaviors. So now what happens is this child absorbs that projection inside of them and now holds that as their truth, not realizing that that experience actually doesn't belong to them. That experience is actually something that the parent is holding within them, they just don't want to feel. So they're giving it to their child to hold for them. And sometimes it's expressed as even unconscious loyalty. I will hold the shame for my parents out of love. It's this belief system, unconscious belief system, that love is if I hold this for my parents. So if my father, for example, let's say has shame around not being financially successful, and the child will potentially experience this projection of shame onto themselves and then not be financially successful because they don't want to trigger that shame within their father, as one example, right? Or it can also be the daughter is holding sexual shame of the mom and is really repressing a lot of her expressions because she doesn't want to trigger that shame within the mother and then compromise that relationship, right? Or it could be the opposite. She becomes promiscuous or is overly expressive simply to hold that shame for the mother, not really realizing that's not who inherently she is. But coming back to people pleasing, essentially, when a child holds the shame that says you are bad or you are not enough, what they start doing is they start to try to prove to the world that that is not so, because holding the shame is so uncomfortable, it's so painful. And then they walk around and compromise themselves. They try to earn this love from the world and this validation from the world, having a really tough time feeling any kind of projections from the world or messages from the world that they are bad in any kind of way. And so what that actually does, it prevents them from being introspective, because it becomes all or nothing. If they make one mistake, it triggers the shame and they start to feel as if they are a horrible person and they do everything wrong and they have no goodness about them. And what happens is that they actually don't get a chance to really analyze the things that they could improve about themselves, about how they treat others, about some of their actions. And that is essentially because they don't know their inherent goodness. And that is the key, is not knowing that inherently you are good, right? And the value that you hold is inherent, not external, but internal value of being a human being. And essentially your existence alone is what gives you value. And that inherently there is goodness inside of you. And so through healing this shame, this false belief of being inherently bad, starts with challenging that belief and asking, is it actually true? Like those stories that we hold, is it actually true? Are we actually bad? Does that experience that I just had mean that I am horrible in every single way, right? And so when we start to challenge that, we also start to push back on some of the projections the world oftentimes places on those of us that have the belief of being bad. Because the world, for the most part, doesn't like taking responsibility. And so these kids who grew up taking on the projections of their parents, unwanted projections, and it really affects their self-esteem. And then they walk around the world and attract partners and attract situations where people in their lives who don't want to take responsibility for their own feelings, their own actions, they find these people and then they project it onto them. And so the world becomes this huge cesspool of projections where everyone is just basically disowning their own experience and projecting it on one another. And so it all starts with challenging those beliefs and starting to look for evidence of that inherent goodness. And then once we are rooted in knowing that we are good, and we start to let go of the shame and give back the projections that we've taken on, these unconscious binds and loyalties, we start to create more space for recognizing situations, moments in our lives where we have missed the mark of love, of goodness, of treating others the way we want to be treated. And we can hold those experiences without collapsing into this shame spiral of all or nothing, but we can start to notice like, okay, I am inherently good, but in this moment I did something that wasn't good. And it was a moment and it was an action that I've taken, but it's not who I truly am. And so there I can challenge, I can explore what is it inside of me that made me want to do that, that didn't allow me to be more compassionate, that something inside of me took over and chose to harm, to chose to blame or to demand or to take something that wasn't mine. And then from there, you can hold that experience with that awareness and with that compassion and that introspection. And from there, you can start to change and heal. And by doing that, root more into the values that you're holding and awareness of the fact that you have a power to change. You have a power to be a conscious being, not a reactive, unconscious, shameful individual. So I hope that helps, and please ask any questions or leave comments, and I'll be happy to address them. Take care.